Hi, I'm Hannah Cooke and I am singing alto in Choir 1 in this recording of Thomas Tallis' Spem in Alium. It's always pretty nerve-wracking to kick off this whole piece, and particularly when I looked around the room with the ORA recording and saw these 39 amazing singers all standing in a circle around me. But it also feels very empowering to be the first person to take a breath and make a sound that is going to be the starting point of this intricate and beautiful piece of polyphony. And I also always know that everyone else is going to be just as focused on singing their own parts as I am. So I just try not to overthink it and to put the nerves to one side and enjoy the experience. For me, what's so special about Spem in Alium is that it's so much more than the sum of its parts, particularly when it's sung by solo voices. Each line is this incredibly beautiful expression on its own, but then on top of that you have the 5 voices within each choir, and then the building even bigger than that, you have 8 choirs all working together. And I think it becomes really the ultimate expression of what ensemble singing can be about, where for each person, each voice line, it is a very intense emotional expression of that part, but the whole thing only really makes sense when you come together and work as a team, and only really makes sense within that collective effort. I think Spem in Alium is one of those pieces that works in layers, and the first layer is really just the practical challenge of the whole thing staying together and everyone starting and ending at the same time, without any unexpected gaps or people singing in the rest in the middle. And it's absolutely not a given that will be fine in performance. Although I should hasten to add, we didn't have any mishaps with the ORA Singers on that front. But I think actually once you get beyond that nuts and bolts challenge of the practical side of it, it can become a very physical experience. You're sort of immersed in the sound because of the numbers and because of the way you tend to be spread out, and the music will move around from choir to choir in a very physical way. And then suddenly you get these great big tutti sections with all 40 singers singing at the same time, and it's really something you feel more than something you hear. Almost, it's like standing in front of a really loud speaker and feeling the music pulsing through your body rather than being able to hear it almost. And I think Spem as a piece is quite unique in that way. Spem in Alium is all about hope, and the text talks about hope in the face both of God's wrath and his graciousness. And I think hope can mean a lot of different things to different people, whether in a religious sense or not. But for me, that idea of hope being something that prevails across both difficult and better times is what makes the piece so powerful. And I think especially at a time like this, that sense of hope is something that can connect us mentally and emotionally to a more positive time in the future that will come. It was a really extraordinary experience singing James Macmillan's Vidi Aquam for the first time, because I think that every one of us in the room realised as it was happening that we were part of something very special, hearing the music come to life for the first time. As with so many of James Macmillan's pieces, he uses a musical language that is very familiar, but wrought in such a way that it's also completely original and new, and very distinctively his own voice. And I'm absolutely certain that it will be a piece that that becomes a absolute favourite in the canon and sits alongside Spem and Alium, that it was commissioned to be sung alongside. The question of how the coronavirus has affected singers, I think, is a really huge one, and one with many answers, as there are people to ask. But for me personally, it's on a practical level has meant going from a busy schedule of concerts, tours, recordings, you name it, to really just being at home suddenly for a long time, and without any clear prospect of when things might get back to the way they were. I think, of course, in some ways that's been a very difficult thing to confront, but there have also undoubtedly been positives for me about having that time at home, sleeping in my own bed every night, having the time to exercise, having the time to read, and actually a really positive outcome of that time to not be rushing around has been a sort of regeneration of my creativity, which has been really fun and a positive surprise. I don't think we're out of the woods by any means yet, and I think there are going to be some more tough times ahead. But I have to say that I personally feel very positive and hopeful about the future for our industry. I think you just have to look around you at the sheer amount of creative talent. And I'm not talking only about singers, musicians, performers. I'm talking about the arts managers, the festival planners, the producers, the marketing teams, who have always, against all the odds, managed to make creative endeavours come into being, really against all the odds. And I think that actually, when you're going through a crisis like this, the people I want to have on my team are exactly those people who are working in this industry as performers and in other roles. And for that reason, I feel not only positive that we'll get through it, but that I think we'll thrive and come to a really bright future. So yeah, I feel very hopeful about that. I have a pretty eclectic taste when it comes to listening to music at home, and there's usually something going on in the background, but more often than not, it'll be some Bill Evans while I'm pottering around the kitchen cooking something or other. We've had a lot of wonderful times with ORA Singers, and I think one of the real privileges of singing for this group is just the sheer volume of new repertoire that we are exposed to and get to perform for the first time and bring into the world, bring to life, I think, from the composer's scores. I would say, actually, though, my real favourite experience, recently at least, has been the recording of this new disc, and the opportunity to work in so many different ways. I think both working as part of a large ensemble, really with the finest singers one could ask for in recording Talis' Spem and Alium, and also James Macmillan's Vidi Aquam, but also for me working as a part of a much smaller consort, undirected actually in this case. And again, I think that's it's a real privilege that Susie puts her trust in her musicians in that way, and working with John Milsom on those pieces was just a real joy and privilege. But it's a wonderfully varied repertoire that we have as a group, and I think that's just, it gives rise to a lot of joy. It's very hard to sum up Spem and alium in only one word, but I think the word I would have to choose would be majestic.